Hey guys, Wesley Shibata here. Story time today. So people have been asking me to talk about the parts of the helmet, and what I'd like to talk about today is this one right here, the lens frame. So this one, the lens frame, this is the first part I ever created for the mask, and this was handmade actually. So around 2010, when I started making this one, I had to start my parents' room, actually. I lost my job around 2010 after the Lehman shock, and I just wanted to create my own helmet. So before I start talking about this, how I started to come about with this design was because of this little thing right here. So this is a 10 millimeter fan, and I saw this one around 2004 when I was in Akihabara because I was having problems with fogging issues when I was playing airsoft, and I was looking for something small, and they had this 20 millimeter fan for computers, and I thought that was just way too big to put on a sensei mask. And I saw this little thing. I was like, wow, this is really, really small. And I bought a couple of these and I tried it out. Well, back then, the motors were still a little bit big, and it created this huge noise, and people could hear me like almost a mile away. It was crazy. And because the lenses were so big on a sensei mask, it was a bit this big, and it had to blow a lot of air to defog it, right? And I was thinking maybe I could make it a lot smaller. And I was asking around. I was still teaching business English at Berlitz back then. And one of my students was an engineer for Suzuki. And he was this aerodynamics engineer, and I was asking him about how can I make this fan blow enough air without making too much noise and still defog it. And he told me about this Quanda effect. Have you ever heard of this Quanda effect? He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I'm not an engineer, obviously. And then he said, well, Quanda effect is a surface tension on a specific surface, right? So what it does, the air would go over it and glide around it. So even if you're pushing air onto here, it would go around it and circle around it, something like that. So, and I said, okay, that's a little bit complicated for me. So around 2010, when I lost my job as a business English teacher, maybe I said, okay, maybe I can start making my own helmets. So I went to Tokyo and Akihabara, and I had this little thing with me, and I had to figure out how am I going to make a housing for this. So I bought like about $500 worth of materials with me at that time. I bought different resins, different types of clay, and then came back home, and I had all of this material with me. It's like I have no idea how to do this thing. Good thing there was Google and there was YouTube. Good thing there was Google and YouTube. So I thought, okay, research. For 2 months, I was researching on how to use all of these materials, like the right resin, the right kind of clay, how to carve it, and so on and so forth. And okay, I just had to go at it. I was staying in one of my parents' rooms. It was a really small room. It was like 6 tatami. I think that's about, how would I say, about 20 square meters, I think. Oh no, less than 20 square meters, about 10 square meters. It was that small. That room was that small. And I was carving and testing out different types of shapes first there were shapes that was too big, there were shapes that was too small, it didn't have peripheral vision, and 6 months later, I came up with this one right here. And I was hand carving this from this resin. Everything was hand carved. 6 months later, I came up with the version 1. This is a version 2. The version 1 right here. Now, I had one part, which was hand carved. And back then, around 2010, 3D scanning was very expensive, and 3D printing was also very expensive, and I didn't really have the money, and I spent all of my money on the materials, which was $500. So I took a challenge. Well, I don't really have the money, so I had to carve the other side of the lens. And that was tough because I was doing like, okay, is that right? Is it actually symmetrical to the other side? No, it's not. And I had to go over and over and over again. And it took me another 3 months, which was a little bit faster now. Well, because I already knew how to use the materials. So, and I was thinking, okay, we have to do this really well. Now, let's talk about the design. This lens frame right here houses this microjet fan because this thing is a little, how to say, brittle, especially those 3 posts right there. It breaks easily, and I needed to protect it from BBs. So what I did was I created this tube right here, right? And that tube protects this one from getting hit by BB. The next challenge I had was, how am I going to create the quanta effect? What I did was, the fan is directly, the fan's air is directed towards the lens right here. So it's pushing air onto the surface of the lens, and I had to create that. So what it does, it blows air onto the lens, and it creates this circular motion and defogs it. So, and defogs it, and then you have this small exit right here for the steam to come out. Now, as you can notice here, this tail is the air duct. What it does, it sucks, well, the air goes right in here. The reason why this is facing up instead of facing this way is because, well, cooler air coming from up is blowing air onto the lens instead of warmer air. Well, warm air rises, right? So if that happens, your steam from your body is just going to go right into the lens. So it has to be fresh air coming all the way down to the lens. So that's why it's like that. Now, the size of this is specific for the low noise of the fans, because these things can create a lot of noise when it's blowing so much air to defog it. So I needed enough air, quiet enough to blow air onto the lens so it doesn't really fog up. Yeah. So the next one. Why does this have these 2, how do I say, poles, stoppers? Well, it's actually stopper. The reason why these 2 are like this is because it stops it from going into the mask, right? So I put this in, and then it's stuck right there. See that? Well, actually you don't really need it, but also it looks really cool at the same time. Actually, it is really needed because when you use the press machine, we cannot use a, how do you say, a socket like this anymore. Now, next one is the slide-in lens frame. Now, why slide-in lens frame? So, when you want to change the lenses easily, you can just simply slide it out, change it to a different lens. Now, the first version, version 1, when I started making the first masks, this was actually screwed in. So we put the lens on top of it and then we had to screw it in. But that design wasn't really that good. It usually breaks and we had to replace it. And it was costly at the same time because we had to use screws and we had to send like different, extra Allen wrench. So yeah. Now, next one, the lenses. Now the lenses are ANSI lenses. As you can see, there's like, this was actually shot with a 12 gauge birdshot number 9 pellet. So it was very small and it was about 1,000 FPS and it stopped. You can see that, right? And I have that video of me shooting these lenses on my YouTube channel. So if you guys want to check it out, just go to my YouTube channel and we have a lot of videos over there. So yeah. So, and then that one right there. Now, lastly, people have been asking me, why is it on a socket like this? Well, I wanted to make it as human as possible. Like it looked, what's the word? But anyway, something like an eyeball, and you have the eye socket and you just remove this one and then you can replace this. If this one breaks, you can easily replace it. So everything about the helmet is replaceable. All of the parts, like nothing here is attached to one part. So there's just so many parts with this one. So for example, you need new lenses. Okay, you get new lenses. This one breaks, you can get new lens frames. You get new fans as well, or you get wiring set and so on and so forth. Another thing is that it also lessens the vibration of the fans. Okay, so that's basically it with the lens frame right here. Now, if you guys have any questions, just message me and I'll make a video about that, and hope to see you soon. Thank you guys. Bye. Thanks for watching.